morning. I'm so happy to welcome you here tonight. My name is Kristen. I'm one of the librarians here at Batavia Public Library. And this evening, we'll be learning how to power your home with the sun in a program brought to you in partnership with the Batavia Environmental Commission. Our next program will be Protecting Dark Skies on Wednesday, November 6th at 7 p.m. Join us to learn about the concept of light pollution, the impact of light pollution on humans and wildlife, and explore how we can restore celestial darkness in our communities with dark sky-friendly lighting practices. And you can sign up for this and other great programs on our calendar at bataviapubliclibrary.org. And now I want to introduce our presenter tonight. This is Mike Bullock. Because he wanted to reduce his carbon footprint, Mike's house has had solar panels since 2012, powering his electric vehicle and heat pump. Now, Mike is an ambassador for the Illinois Solar Energy Association, inspiring others with his enthusiasm for solar by communicating the benefits of transitioning from traditional fuels to renewables. And he talks about solar system ownership at public events like this one. Welcome, Mike. We will also have here tonight 3 members of the Batavia Environmental Commission. Michael Woolowhite, I'm sorry about the name, Gary King, and Andrew Deichman. So if you have any questions about what else we can be doing for the citizens of Batavia, feel free to talk to either me or them, and we will see what we can put together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kristen. This is what I check out. You can hear me in the back okay? All right. So, like Kristen said, I've had solar since 2012. I just mentioned to sum it up in the front here. It's been the best investment I've made in my home. I've been living in my home for almost 24 years. So you can imagine we made some investments in it. This is by far the best investment you can make in your home. And as I go through this, I'll talk some more about the value of this investment. ISCA is an organization that's been around since 1975. And it's been advocating and educating about the value of solar energy since then. And a lot of the policies that we have in place in the state are due to the efforts of the organization. So I'm really happy to represent ISCA and all the solar homeowners in Illinois. Just a little bit about electric generation, and this is not totally up to date. It takes a while for them to refresh this. But where do we get our electricity today? You see that pie on the left? That's nuclear energy. And then the next biggest slice of the pie is coal. And the little sliver that's also blue, that's solar. But some of those other colors there are wind and hydro and others. The state of Illinois has a goal to get 40% of its electricity from renewables by 2030. So you can see we have a little ways to go. And so homeowner by homeowner, we can make progress towards that number. I will also say that some of the data is not there because I consume a lot of the energy and it does not go out onto the grid. So the homeowners, the data is not perfect, but it's directionally correct. We have a long ways to go. But we've made a lot of progress. So there's a lot of solar installed. When it comes to states, we're 15th in the nation. There's a lot of jobs now in the state. Look at that number. How many homes can we power with solar? Almost 350,000. And this is from 2023, so it's a lot more than that. We've installed a lot of solar in 2024. And it's projected to grow quite substantially. Here's another little look at that data. We see we had a really big year in 2021. That's because of some of the policies were kind of running out with some of the laws that were passed earlier. Now there's a new law called CEJA that's been passed, so it's picking up again, but we need to accelerate it. If we look at across the state, you can see that people are installing solar all across the state. And you know, earlier this year when we had the eclipse, I was one of those people that drove down to southern Illinois, somewhere around here, to watch the eclipse. And in driving north to south, I saw lots and lots of solar on farms all across the state, which was really kind of exciting for me to see. There is solar all across the state, and it's growing. So why are people going solar? You heard that the reason I wanted to do is that I wanted to reduce my carbon emissions. I don't want to contribute to the damage that we are causing to our planet. It improves public health because my solar array does not pollute, right? I don't know if you know this, that you think about the air quality in the Chicago area. I used to teach some solar classes and teach people how to evaluate solar. And I would ask them about the air quality in the Chicago area. I said, what do you think? If you get a letter grade, A, B, C, D, E, or F, a lot of people say, well, it's a lot better than it used to be, maybe a B. Well, the American Lighting Association gives it an F. Gives it an F. So we have a long ways to go with air quality. So it improves public health. It creates jobs. You saw that we have close to 6,000 jobs. That's a year old. There's more this year. So it creates jobs. It creates careers. It saves money on your electric bill. It increases the home value. So your home value will go up, but you know what? Your taxes won't. It's separated from the taxes. So if you want to sell your home faster, it's got a higher value. People are going to want that house, but it doesn't increase your taxes. That's a nice benefit in the state of Illinois. And you know what? If we run out of supply, we got bigger problems. If the sun doesn't come up tomorrow, we got bigger issues, right? So these are some reasons to go solar. Now, why do people not go solar? There's a lot of myths out there. People don't understand exactly how things work. So some people say you have to have a southern exposure. That's what I thought. I was very interested in solar from when I was a kid. But I thought it had to be on the south part of the roof. I have an east-west roof. And then I went on a solar tour in 2009, and I talked to lots of people that had solar on the west side of their roof, which is where I wanted to put it. It works fine on the west side. It works fine on the east side. Just don't put it on the north side. Which unfortunately, people in my neighborhood have it on their north side. So I think it's important that people come and get educated about where you should and shouldn't put solar. But you don't have to have a southern exposure. Solar panels are going to cause your roof to leak, deteriorate, or collapse. That's not true. Just like we have things coming through our roof now, vents and so forth, roofers are very good at making sure that roofs don't leak. Solar installers are very good about making sure that roofs don't leak when they put solar on top of the roof. So it's not going to leak. Installing solar will increase my property taxes. It won't. I just said that in the state of Illinois, it will increase your home value, but it won't increase your taxes. People say it'll be harder to sell my house. In data around the United States, it sells faster and it sells for more. Now, we don't have Illinois-specific data yet because we don't have enough people selling their houses. And we're just kind of coming up that curve with installations. But across the nation, it sells faster. It's too cold here. Solar panels can't withstand snow, wind, hail, and sleet. They actually like the cold. So there's no moving parts. It's just electrons flowing. They flow better in the cold, just like electronics. That's why they have fans in computers, because the electronics like it cold. So it works fine. Now, if there's snow, and I'll show you a slide a little bit later, when my solar modules have been packed in snow, yeah, they're not going to produce. But think about if you're in your car, you get in your car, there's snow on your windshield, it's a sunny day, the sun's still coming through, right? So you do get a little bit. And when the snow is initially falling, it's going to produce for a little bit until the snow gets too thick. But it actually likes the cold. And they're made to withstand hail. So they're made to withstand the hail. So they're designed to withstand that. It's too expensive. I will tell you that I'm going to talk about different ways to go solar. If you pay cash for it, they're expensive. But it's important to think about it as an investment. And I'll show you the return on the investment for my solar. And if you added solar now, your return would be even greater than mine. The utility would pay you for the extra power you produce. Unfortunately, that is not true. So our policy in Illinois is changing. Right now, people are on net metering, and I'll talk about that, but my short answer is you get a credit, but you don't get cash. So I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But they won't pay you. We don't get enough sun here. We get plenty of sun. Until maybe about 10 years ago, this is Germany. Germany produced more solar energy than the rest of the world combined. Now China blew way past them, and we've gone past them as well. But see this color? It's kind of like Alaska, right? So we get a lot more sun than Germany does. And Germany's been doing fine for a long time with solar energy. We get plenty of sun. So until I added a heat pump, I was producing almost 100% of my energy with my solar array on my roof. Then I got a heat pump, got an electric vehicle, now I need more. But I got plenty of sun on my house to power all my electric needs. That's including 2 cars, heating my house. I still haven't converted my dryer to electric yet, and my hot water heater, but I can power everything with solar on my roof. So we get enough sun here in Illinois, just fine. So the electric grid is changing. There was a nice article I read today about this is a big change where the world is changing to electrify. Huge change. We have a lot of work to do to get there. But we're decentralizing our energy generation from these big plants where if something goes wrong, we have reliability issues, to more decentralized production, which makes a whole lot of sense when you think about being resilient and not having one source of an error or a problem where the grid goes down. With that comes a lot of innovation, and there's a lot of amazing, cool things going on with being more resilient and handling, going from these big central power plants to more distributed energy generation. So that's a big shift that's happening. Now just a little bit, I'm not going to get too technical here, but a typical residential system will have a solar array. So if you look at number 1, there's a PV array on the roof, right? It's going to generate DC current. So our homes operate on alternating current, right? So it's going to generate direct current electricity on the roof. And there's an inverter that switches it to alternating current. There are a couple different ways to do this. I have microinverters on my roof, which convert the DC current into AC. There's some advantages to that. It lowers the voltage, so if firefighters ever had to go up there, they would be happier that there's microinverters rather than a central inverter, so the voltage is a lot lower on my roof. Otherwise, there's a central inverter, and that's what you see here. So we've got DC coming in, AC going out, and it's going to our service panel. And so it goes into that service panel, and if you need to use the power, you're going to use the power. And for most people with the installations, if the extra power is going to go to their neighbors, because all of our houses on the street are all connected, right? The electrons are just flowing from one house to the next. Now, if you have a battery, then you could choose to keep a little bit, extra if you want to for the battery. But typically, we call a grid-tied system. You're going to use what you need and then send the rest to the grid. Now, on a typical day, I send 60% of the energy that my roof generates to my neighbors. And so ComEd keeps track of that. Here in Batavia, the utility here keeps track of that. Batavia, by the way, has a really good net metering. Are you all from Batavia? Mm-hmm. Batavia has a really good net metering policy. So when the changes come to the rest of the state, they're not going to impact you, which is really good news. So Batavia is going to keep track of what you send to the grid, and they're going to give you credit for that. And the nice thing about Batavia, unless they've changed it recently and I missed it, is that that rollover pretty much doesn't get zeroed out. For me, with ComEd, once a year, any extra credit, they take it. So that's how these systems work. The real simple way. You produce energy, whatever you need, it's going to supply that. The rest is going to go out on the grid. The Batavia utility is going to keep track of what they send to you and what you send to them. And then you'll pay the net of that. It's a good approach. Okay, so that's just how these things work. The process is to figure out first, am I a good site for that? Like, is there too much shade? Have you got trees all around? Not a great choice for solar because it's going to be shaded. So do a site evaluation, that's the first thing. At ISCA, we recommend you get 3 different quotes. You'll get different designs. You'll have a design maybe with a microinverter. You have a different proposal that's a central inverter. You'll have different modules. Then you start asking questions and figure out what is appropriate for you. So we would recommend 3. By the way, our website is a good source for looking at contractors. You put in your zip code and it'll give contractors that are near you. I have a sheet up here. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, that's a good way to stay informed on policy and a lot of different things. So feel free to put your name and your email up here. But our website, it's illinoissolar.org. And then you can look for business members that install solar and put your zip code in and you'll get a list. Call them up, have 3 come out, give you a quote, and then make a decision. The next thing is that you have to have an agreement with the Batavia utility to let you connect into the utility. You're also going to need a permit. Once you have that permit and the interconnection agreement, then the installer is going to order materials. And then they're going to install it. And it says installation typically less than 1 week. Different installers have different crew sizes. So my neighbor today, they started their installation, they're getting solar, they started today, it'll probably be done tomorrow. Because of the way they crew, the number in their crew. Others, it may take 3 or 4 days. It's all based on how big their crews are, how they choose to do it. This is pretty realistic, about 3 to 4 months to go solar. It's probably a reasonable time. This has some sources on our website. There is a solar calculator you can check out, and a few other resources. Again, if you go to illinoissolar.org, there is a lot of good information there on that website, including that Find a Professional tool, and FAQs for homeowners is a good thing to check out as well.
Do you mind if I take a picture of that?
Go, take a picture, yeah. So financing. You can pay cash. Then it's a lot of cash to pay. So it is like a big downstroke infusion of cash, but then you get 25, 30 years of electricity. And so you can do that. You can do a traditional loan. You can do a bank loan. You can do a home equity loan. I would say a few years ago, a loan was probably the better financial approach, but now the rates are higher, so probably cash is the better approach. There are also organizations that do special solar electric loans, and the Clean Energy Credit Union is one of those. Just a caveat there is that they have to have qualified suppliers, basically installers in the area that they approve of to do that. But then they have, you get a tax credit, so they'll do part of the loan that's maybe shorter in duration, enough time for you to get that tax credit from the federal government, and then a longer one for the balance of the system. So Clean Energy Credit Union is something to consider. And there are some other organizations like that banks that exist to drive clean energy. So Clean Energy Credit Union is one of those options. So cash, you can do a traditional loan, you can do a solar electric system loan. Another thing you can do, that's if you want to own the system. You don't have to own the system. So there are some companies that will put it on your roof, but they own the system. So you're essentially leasing your roof to them to put it on the roof. So a power purchase agreement is one form of doing that. Another is a solar lease. I would just say with those kind of arrangements, a lot of people in Illinois, I would say a good percentage across the state are doing solar leases. So that is a very common thing, is a solar lease. Just would read the fine print when you have that solar lease, just like any contract, right? You won't save as much, so it's not as a good a financial investment, but it's still pretty darn good. It's going to save you money. Now, if you're going to sell your house, while that's on there, that's another thing to read the fine print about. Sometimes there's make sure you can transfer the lease to the new homeowner. So you don't have to own the system. So those are some options. You can buy the system. You can not buy the system. PPAs, solar leases. I would say probably this is a lot more popular in the state. I think these are starting to grow a little bit, but these are probably a lot more popular. And a lot of people are doing this. So there's some options. I can own it, or I don't need to own it. All right, next thing I want to talk about is net meter. And so in Batavia, and I'll focus on Batavia. Batavia's got, unless it's changed recently, a really great policy. So they're going to keep track of what you use and give you credit for that. And if it carries over, like say in 2024, let's say you produce more electricity than you use, they're not going to zero it out. Like ComEd for me, in April, if I have a remaining credit, it goes to zero. You have a choice with ComEd to take April or October. Any credit that's remaining, they zero it out. That's not the case in Batavia. They roll it over. So that is a really nice arrangement. So Batavia, I would say out of the municipal utilities and out of anybody in the state, it has the best policy. It went from the worst to first in Mike's view. It was probably about 10 years ago they changed it. And it's a really nice policy because they just carry it over. So you don't lose those credits, which is fantastic. So think of it as like a bank account. Remember I told you that 60% of my energy goes to my neighbors? So then that goes into like your bank account. During the day, the sun goes down, I use those credits, right? Sun comes up, I'm producing more than I need, the bank account goes up. So it does that, and what happens is that during the sunny months, it keeps going up, and at the end of the month, I have a credit. Well, now these months, the sun goes down earlier, it starts to do this, right? So that's the way it works for Batavia, is it just keeps track of what's the net you send to the grid versus you receive from the grid. And the utility is just going to keep track of that. Okay? Are questions on that? Because net metering is really critical for the financial decision. Yeah.
Hi, Mark. I'm Garrett Schweikhofer. I'm with Sunheat, and I've seen your presentation before, way back.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if your home had net metering with Batavia's metering laws. How much excess have you generated in your system?
I haven't, because after I put the array in, at that time I didn't have any EVs. Now I have 2 EVs. I had a gas furnace, now I have a heat pump. So I had this fixed array, and my demand has been going up for electricity. So I haven't had, I would have about $40 when I first put it in April, about $40 that I would lose. And the first year that happened, for about an hour after I saw that bill, I was like, "Arr." It lasted about an hour. The next year when I saw it, it lasted about 5 minutes. And after that, I was like, whatever. I'm helping the utility out. So, but in the last few years, it's been zero.
Okay, so yeah, you use a lot more electricity now than you used to.
Yeah, but I use a lot less gas.
Right. So how close are you to like net 0%?
Well, as it turns out, I'm getting a new array because I have to replace my roof, and I will be net zero then. I'll be producing more than I use. allowing that I'm going to change out my dryer eventually, get off of it totally. So I'll be net positive.
Totally electric?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whether Illinois or Batavia, when you feed the grid, are they giving you a credit based on the retail price of electricity or their wholesale price?
Retail, and in Batavia it's retail. I should say mine is based on the hourly price. So I switched to hourly pricing, which I don't believe is available to Batavia, but maybe. But in Batavia it'll be full retail, and they'll give you that credit. It's a really good policy. It's full retail credit.
So that's delivery and supply?
Yeah, I believe so. I'm not saying I'm an expert on the Batavia policy. Back when it was not good and moving to good, then I could give you all the details. But I've slept a few nights since then. It's been a few years, but I would say it went from worst to first, so it's a good deal in Batavia. Okay, we okay with that? All right. So net metering is a really important thing when you think about going solar. And this is a ComEd bill, and I'm not sure what the Batavia bill looks like, but with the ComEd bill, it shows you for the month what was the inflow from the grid and what was the outflow to the grid. And it'll look at what is the net of that, and it will charge you the net. And if there's a credit, it'll show you what that credit is. So I'm guessing that that's pretty much the way Batavia does it as well. They just keep track of the net flow of electricity. And in Batavia, again, year to year, you can carry it over for a certain number of years. And if you produce more than you use, that's why I wouldn't do that. I would kind of size it so it's about 100% or 105% of what you need. And then you never have to worry about it. Yeah.
So do you still pay like taxes and fees, delivery, et cetera? Because the comment,
And I don't know what,
not in Batavia, but I live in Batavia, but I'm not Batavia.
You're on ComEd?
I'm ComEd. And I see up there, their taxes and fees, 24 cents.
Yeah, so you get credit for the taxes too, but they're changing that next year. So for ComEd and Ameren territory, it's not going to be quite as good. It's still going to be good, but it's not going to be good because I get the credit on the taxes and everything. This is not my bill, but I get credit for the taxes today, but next year it's going to be different. It's still going to be good.
How many different utility companies are there in the state?
Well, Ameren and ComEd are the big ones, and there's one in the northern part of the state. This has a slice of it because they're more of a Wisconsin utility, but they cover a slice of Illinois, and I forget what their name is. Oh, you mean municipal utilities?
Yeah.
Oh, I think there's 40. 40-ish.
40 different net metering programs.
Yeah, it'd be like 43 if you add the big utilities. Because ComEd and Ameren are, there's a law they have to buy, but there's slight differences. And I'm sure the third one is too. So 40 municipal utilities-ish, and then the 3 big ones. So yeah, they're all municipal utilities, they do their own thing. And then you have co-ops. So in addition to the municipal utilities, there's co-ops as well. They do their own thing. Yeah.
So you said you needed to put on a new roof, and I'm wondering, solar panels, do they extend the life of the roof? Do they reduce the life of the roof?
Yeah, so I have them on the west side, but I don't have them on the east side. So the roof on the east side needs to be replaced. The west side is fine. The solar panels protect the roof, because roof degradation is, the biggest factor is UV rays, and so is shading it. But I can't really just replace half my roof. Yeah.
How much should your bill be in order to think about even doing it? So should it be like $100 a month, and then it would make sense if it's $50 a month?
Yeah, I think it might be $100 I know some solar installers want to have a minimum size they put on the roof, and I don't know exactly what that is. But, you know, if, I don't have an answer to say it should be $100 a month before you consider it. Because it would probably make sense to do it regardless. If you can get a solar installer, even if it's really, really tiny, you can get a solar installer and say, yeah, I'll put solar on your roof, it's going to benefit you. It may not be quite as beneficial because, you know, having the cost for the installers per watt is going to be a little higher. But there's no harm in having 3 people come out and say, hey, here's what I can do for you, right? All right, any other questions on net metering? Because I'm going to continue, because I'll show you my system and then I think there'll be some more things to learn from that. And I'm going to, since we're focusing on Batavia, you don't have hourly pricing that I don't think, so I'm going to skip through these slides here. I will share you though, this is some data, because people ask me a lot of times, should I go on hourly pricing? So you could go on hourly pricing with ComEd. And I'm like, it depends, I think, on the size of your array and what percent of electricity demand you use. But in general, for me, it has made financial sense for me to go on to hourly pricing. So that's just looking at month to month. Has it been a good thing? And down here, it's showing that it's getting a little bit better. And I think some of that is just due to when ComEd has a peak demand, I'm producing more electricity. So don't have that option in Batavia, so I don't know if it's worth going into detail. But if people have questions later, I can help you with that. Yeah?
How do you think the new ComEd net metering laws are going to affect retail net metering prices?
It's going to have a decent impact on it. But those that have it already are going to be grandfathered in, so they don't have to change anything. Mm-hmm. But it'll have an impact. It'll still be good to go solar, but not quite as good as it has been.
I'm sorry, what is the difference between hourly pricing and retail net metering?
Every hour there's a price. When I send something to the grid, I get a credit for what I times that price for that hour. Mm-hmm. I get a charge for what I use that hour. What they're trying to do is shift demand a little bit. So we charge our electric vehicles at night because the price tends to be lower. And so they're using that to help drive usage during off-peak hours.
Supply and demand.
Supply and demand, yep. So sometimes the price is negative, and I always hope that we're charging our car that night, but we don't always do that. But sometimes the price is negative, and they're paying us to charge our electric vehicle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because if no one's going to use it, they just lose it, right? So they'd rather have somebody use it. All right, let's talk about incentives. Illinois has some great incentives to go solar. There's an SREC program that stands for Solar Renewable Energy Certificate or Credit. People talk about it different ways. And you know, we estimate, if you think about the cost of that system, it's going to cover 20 to 30% of the cost of the system. You'll get that back, unfortunately, not immediately. It'll be about 9 to 11 months after the installation. Unfortunately, the state of Illinois is a little bit slow in that regard, but you'll get that back in that first year. That's the way to think about it. In that first year, you're going to get 20, 30% back from the state in the credit. That's for the value that solar is going to bring, like thinking about air quality and so forth. That's the value that the state is recognizing for solar power. One SREC is equal to 1 megawatt hour of solar energy. So unless you watch your usage, like a typical home probably uses about 9 megawatt hours a year. So I don't know how relevant it is if you're thinking about going solar to make that conversion or not. I think that the key is these renewable energy credits or certificates, they monetize the environmental benefits of having solar. And the monetized benefits will cover about 20 to 30% of your cost. And you'll get that back from the state in the first year. Okay? All right. The federal incentives are excellent. There's a 30% tax credit through 2032. So when you do your taxes, you would get that credit. And so that's not a deduction, it's a credit. So that's much better than a deduction, it's a credit. So if you add those two numbers up, 30% plus 20 to 30%, that's 50 to 60% of the cost of the system. And you would get both of those back in the first year. Now with the SRECs, it's basically 15 years of production. Well, they're going to keep track of how much energy you produce. And if it doesn't produce as planned, they're going to say, hey, you owe us some money back. So just keep that in mind. It kind of seems like it's a rebate. Illinois used to have a rebate. It kind of feels like it's a rebate, except for that, they call it the clawback feature. If you don't produce as expected, they're going to claw back some of that money. So keep that in mind. Keep that system producing.
They'll claw back some of what?
The money they give you.
The 20 to 30%?
Yeah. So they're just going to keep track of what that production is. So what they do though is they don't give you all in the beginning.
Okay.
They're going to hold some back just in case. And then if it produces as expected, you get that at the end.
They don't give it to you and then say, hey, you know, you messed up.
No, they give it. They give you most of it.
Right, but they don't say, you messed up, give us back some money? You owe
They might.
us?
Yes.
Oh,
If something happens and the system goes down and it's not producing any energy, they will do that. So if something,
the tree falls on it.
trees falls on it, you better fix it, or they're going to come back for their money. Yeah, yes, sir.
So you mentioned on there, it says must secure a contract to sell to Illinois. Like, how do you go about doing that? Like, what's the process?
Yeah, your solar installer
Okay.
will, so some of the installers, they do it themselves. Other installers work with people that handle it,
Okay,
so they'll know.
makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. Just like they'll take care of permitting and all that other stuff.
Perfect.
All right, so really nice incentives, right? This is nice incentives. This is just a little bit more about the process of renewable energy credits. This is just some detail. I'm going to tell you to go to illinoisshines.com because it's probably a little too much detail. The big takeaways, 20 to 30% from the Illinois state program, 30% federal. That's the takeaway. There's some details on illinoisshines.com, and it'll have things like what is the price per rec, which is on the screen. If you're in Ameren or ComEd territory, it's one thing. And so with Batavia, you're considered in that ComEd territory. So you get that rate for ComEd. But that's all on illinoisshines.com. This is the CEJA law that went into effect that's enabling this SREC benefit to all of us citizens. And I wanted to go back to the solar that you saw. We have a long ways to go, right? This is the plan. So I just really want you to look at this. The amount of new solar is expected to continue to ramp up over time.
Do you think we'll make it by 2025, by next year?
I don't know. I really don't know. I hope so. And this is interesting. With this CEJA law, the state's saying, I want solar everywhere, which I think is kind of cool. So if you look at the pie here, this is called the Adjustable Block Program. This is the program I've been talking about for homeowners to get that SREC. So they break it down and say, you know what, we want solar all over the place, so we're going to allocate some of this to community solar. Some citizens, their houses are not good for solar. There's maybe shade or something, there's no place to put it. So every citizen in the state can still get their that has an electricity bill, can still get their electricity from solar if they can subscribe to a community solar farm, if they're not all sold out. And so the community solar farms throughout the state, you subscribe to it. And you don't have to like commit to 5 years or anything. And basically you say, hey, I want 2 kilowatts of your solar farm, and you get that credit on your bill for that. So they want to make sure that we build these community solar farms so people that can't put it on their roof can still get solar energy. Pretty cool. Large distributed generation, those are large systems. Small distributed generation, that's like a homeowner. Schools, putting solar on schools. A lot of flat roofs on schools. Let's put solar on them, right? A lot of schools in Illinois now have solar on them. Then equity eligible projects, they want to get solar everywhere. So where maybe there's some less affluent areas, let's do some things to get solar on there. There's a nice Solar for All program. And then community-driven community solar. So that would be like if Batavia says, I'm going to put solar on our community buildings, and I'm going to let people subscribe to that. So that's another program. So the state's saying, I want to do solar in a lot of different ways, which is kind of neat. All right, I want to get to my story, show you my array. I didn't really learn about energy until the energy crisis back in the 70s. Never really thought about it, and then I started asking my parents about, what is this long lines and the gas prices and all that. And so when I was in 8th grade, I did my science project on energy sources. And I did all this studying in libraries, and I said, why are we doing solar? Solar is the one that makes the most sense out of everything. And so I built a solar oven and I cooked hot dogs. I did all these experiments had foil, and I'm like, it's solar energy. That's where we should go. So I didn't get solar until 2012 and put a 4 kilowatt array on my house that you see there. I'm like, I'm gonna dip my toe in the water, see how this works. I'm gonna learn. And so that's what we did first. Had these polycrystalline silicon modules and microinverters. So again, it converts the DC to AC on my roof. And then in 2015, I'm like, I want more. So we filled the roof with solar. So that's what it looked like with the 2 parts of solar array. So I have 41 total modules. 10.8 kilowatts is what it's rated. And this is kind of what it looks like. So the solar comes down on the side of the roof. See the conduit from the roof? And there's a little PV disconnect, so if there's a fire or something, the fireman just turn that off, turn the solar off. My neighbors could do it, anybody could do it. And then it goes into my house right here. And then it comes into the bottom of my service panel here. It's called backfeeding. Now today, they do some things, line side taps or load side, and either one is totally cool. But mine comes in here and the energy goes up here, and these are my circuits. If I need it, it's gonna service my house, and then it goes out through that main breaker and goes to my neighbors. So that's how it works for a back-fed system such as mine. And it was really cool when I first got there. We didn't have the smart meter. It was really fun to watch the system, the dial spin backwards. That was really fun to watch that. So that's a simple way. That's the way it works. And so I've been on this journey to electrify everything. So snow blowers, lawnmowers, all those heat pumps. So my energy demand goes up. And this is that array, and this is looking at production. You get a lot of good information. I can see it on my phone. I can see what it's producing. You can look at each individual panel, see what it's producing. You get a lot of reports. And then you learn that snow happens. So there was in 2013, we had a lot of snow. And so when there's a foot of snow on your solar modules, they're not going to produce power. And then it iced up, so it's lingered. And so it didn't fall off. I get these avalanches. It scares my wife, but I really like it because it means I'm going to produce energy. So it slides off the roof. But that winter, it hung there. So you got to be thinking about that. It's like, okay, snow's going to happen, and I'm not going to get that production. But we can also forecast when the sun comes up, when it goes down. We know how cloudy it is in this area, so you can forecast very precisely what these solar modules are going to produce. If you look at the gray lines, you can see the gray lines that are above the blue is before I added the second system. But if you look at the gray lines in the blue here, it's pretty much as predicted. And so whenever I took that in September 12th, lifetime it produced 119 megawatt hours of energy. That's a whole lot of energy that our roofs can produce. And it's pretty much been in line with forecast. So we think about, I mentioned that most of my energy that I produce goes out to the grid. This is just an example in April, a long time ago. And so this white space here is what I'm using when it's sunny. You see the sun, actually before the sun comes up, I'm producing energy. And I'm producing more than I need. Then this is nighttime. I'm getting it from the grid. I'm using what my array is producing, and I'm sending to the grid. Nighttime, I'm pulling from the grid. And Batavia is going to keep track of that flow of energy. And they'll do the math for you. All right? So that's probably typically what you would see as well if you put it on your roof. So think of that financially. I said that this is the best investment you can make in your home. It's the only investment that saves you money, increases the value of your home, it does not increase your taxes, and on sunny days it brings you joy. Yeah? It's the only thing that does that. And so a lot of times my neighbors will ask me, well, what's the payback? And I'm like, okay, the payback is good, but this is a 25, 30, the warranty on the modules and the production and the microinverters is 25 years. So we think about the warranty on a laptop. It's about 2 years, right? Something like that. It's going to last more than 2 years. The array is going to last more than 25 years. If the warranty is 25, it's going to last a while, right? So the way I looked at it is that it's an investment. I put cash down and I get cash in return for 25, 30 years, 40 years, right? And so I looked at what's the internal rate of return. I calculated payback too, but I want to see what the internal rate of return is. Just like a business would look at what's the internal rate of return of an investment if I buy a new big piece of equipment. It's a long-term investment. So simple payback is not the best way to look at it in my view. So if I look at the cash flows, I put a big amount of cash down, and when I looked at in retrospect, loans were so low then, I should have got a loan. I would have been even a better return. But I paid cash. And so now I'm reaping these cost savings, right? And so I look at, if I discount those with a net present value with a 5% cost of capital, that says that's a $3,500 net present value. My internal rate of return is 8%. Remember I said we can really forecast the sunshine? We can forecast how much it's going to produce? That means it's a low-risk investment. Does that make sense? It's a low-risk, it's going to produce. It's going to save this money. At the time when I did this, Treasury bills were about, I don't know, a little over 1% return. There's a comparison of the risk of a solar installation versus a US Treasury bill. You know what has lower risk? Solar. So let's just compare that, and let's even be a little less, let's be more conservative. Municipal bonds, back then when I was looking at this, were about 2%, 2.5%. Solar is a lower risk than a tax-free municipal bond. So that tells me if I'm making an investment like in a bond or solar, where should I go? 8% is better than 2.5%. I'm going solar. It's a good financial investment all by itself. But then you look at those other benefits I said, it makes good financial sense. Now that was a long time ago when solar cost a lot more than it does now. So then in 2015, which is still a long time ago when solar costs more than it does now, the internal rate of return on that, looking over 30 years, is 12%. When I did this, tax-free municipal bonds were still about 2.5%. It's way better. and it's lower risk. For me, I call that a no-brainer when it increases the value of my home. In addition to this being a good financial investment, I save money, doesn't increase my taxes, and it brings me joy. So all good reasons to go solar. And I told you that the reason I did this in the first place is I want to be a better citizen and not cause destruction in the planet. And so I started doing this. I'm a geeky engineer. I didn't mention that. I'm a geeky engineer. And so I calculated how much CO2 we were putting up into the atmosphere before we did anything. And I calculated, I wanted a visual. So a semi-trailer, I figured out how much CO2 would fit in a semi-trailer at 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And I said, okay, that means that this is the number of semi-trailers I'm throwing up into the air every year because of the electricity that we use. And so then I'm like, I'm gonna X those off. I'm gonna calculate how many semi-trailers I've avoided, and I'm gonna X them off until I break 1 year. And guess what? I'm still counting. And so we've avoided 86.5 tons of CO2, which would fill 378 semi-trailers. Because we can all visualize semi-trailers, right? They pass us on the road all the time, right? So I thought that was a good way to visualize, what am I doing for the planet? I'm not throwing up semi-trailers full of CO2. All right. Do you want to learn a little bit about community solar? Okay. So community solar, I can't put it on my house, so I can put it in a community solar. And see, we got like Hernandez family, the Corey family, Mom and Pop's Diner. We can subscribe to a portion of that array. And then we're just saying, I'm going to buy that electricity from the community solar owner. And what's going to happen is that, I think this is the way Batavia will do it. Batavia will give you a credit on your bill, and you pay the community solar owner. That's the way it happens in Ameren and ComEd. I'm thinking that's the way it happens in Batavia, but perhaps not. But that means anybody that has an electric bill can get their energy from solar energy. And I know, I think some of the community solar farms are totally full with subscriptions. But that if you have a lot of shade, that's something to consider. And so here's what that bill would look like. This is without community solar. Total would be 109. With community solar, you get an electric bill. You see that has a credit because of what was produced on the community solar farm. So I pay 59 to the electric utility, but I pay 40 to the community solar farm. So you save a little bit of money, but you get clean energy. So community solar is a really awesome program that's available to everybody in the state. If for some reason, so that your question about what if I only need a small array? Hey, maybe it makes more sense to go community solar. I get clean energy, I don't have to put it on my roof, because I will tell you, if it's really small, some solar installers will say that's too small. For me to come out and make it make sense for you financially, it needs to be this big. I don't know what that number is, but you can go community solar, still get clean energy. So I think that's a nice thing to consider.
So that sounds too good to be true. And all this is, all you have to do is, you don't put any upfront costs.
Yeah.
You just sign up for community solar and you start saving money.
Exactly. It does sound too good to be true. Because you're just going to, it's like, who do you know wants to save 10% on their electricity bill? That's the question. Everybody, right? Well, you can sign up for community solar. And, oh, by the way, if you put solar on your house, let's say you need 10 kilowatts to take care of your power, you can only put 7 on your home. You can put 7 on your home and get 3 kilowatts of community solar. You take care of 100% of your bill. I know a lot of people that have done that. So that's something you can do too. I can only put a little bit on my home, put the balance in community solar, not all your energy's from solar. You know, it's unfortunate that not enough people in the state of Illinois are aware of this program. Because even if you wanted to go solar, there's no reason why you can't get started, like put it on your house. There's no reason why you can't get started with community solar. You know, it's go to the website, see what's available, fill out a form, sign up, say I want this much kilowatt, and start saving. So community solar is a great way to go. All right, and that was essentially my last slide. Just, you know, there are a lot of resources that ISEA has to help you out. And people like me, solar ambassadors, if you have questions, we love to talk to people about solar and answer questions. We may not know everything, but I will tell you we're connected to people who have done all kinds of different things. And our website has stories like mine. You can click on Solar Ambassadors and you can see what different people have done, why they've gone solar, what they have done, and how they've done it. So that website's a nice resource. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you personally have tried a battery backup and, you know, for when we lose power, you know, sometimes in the wintertime especially, might be handy. But also at night, when you pull from the grid, is there a possibility of having your own battery that using, you know, you can use that energy?
Yes. So I haven't done it personally. I'm planning to next year, but I haven't done it yet. You know, and battery costs are coming down. Up to this point, I hadn't lost electricity in my home for about 5 years, but now in the last 6 months I have, and it's happened at inopportune times. So I'm like, you know what? I think we should just do it. You know, it's not going to be as great financially as solar because they are still expensive. And if you do that arbitrage where you're going to say, you know, not I'm going to, when it's cheap, I'm going to charge the battery, then when it's more expensive during the day, I'm going to take it to the grid. I don't believe that ComEd, which is where I'm at, lets you do that yet. Batavia may, but that's coming. So other states do that, and other states have virtual power plants. So there's pilots and Vermont's been doing it for a long time. Texas and California have pilots where they basically take all these batteries and it creates resiliency in the grid, because now if the grid needs it, because sometimes the grid needs it to make the sine wave better. If the sine wave it gets a little shaky, our voltage might drop and stuff. That having distributed solar helps with the signal, the sine wave of the grid. So there's a lot of value, things that are valuable about solar. ComEd and Ameren are, you know, we're just not there yet. So it's kind of more from a backup standpoint versus a financial benefit today. Yeah.
So on your panel, you said you changed panels at some point. What motivated you? And then for your size, how many roof penetrations and mounting areas, that kind of mechanics?
I don't know how many penetrations there are. I will tell you that we put on the initial array in 2012, then added more in 2015. Now I need my roof to be replaced. So last Friday, my modules came off. I'm getting a metal roof, a standing seam metal roof, at the end of October. And then the new solar is going on top of that, and there will be no penetrations from the modules. I'm going to have it on the front end and the back of my house. So there'll be just some flashing to have conduit go from the front to the back of my house. So it's very possible with a standing seam, I wouldn't have had any penetrations. With flat roofs, you can do it without any penetrations. With asphalt, there'll be penetrations, and I don't have the exact number, although I have a picture in my house, I could probably count them because now the solar's off. So with 40 modules, you know, they put, I might be able to give you a ballpark figure, but these things are made to last 50 years without leaking. But there's a number of penetrations through my asphalt shingles. All right, other questions? Yeah?
Is there any impact to home insurance?
Yes. Yeah, great question. It will depend on your insurance company. And when we first put the first array, which was 4 kilowatts, our insurance rate went up a little bit. When we added the 6.8, it didn't change. So when you think about it, it's a valuable part of your home.
Right.
So you want to definitely insure it. It just kind of depends on your policy.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you definitely want to insure it. Other questions? Yeah.
So as you're replacing your panels when you're redoing your roof, are you reusing those microinverters, the diode system and everything, or does that have to get replaced at the same time?
I'm gonna donate my system, and I had I was gonna donate it to a nonprofit and found out that they are on 3-phase, so I can't donate. So I'm looking for someone to donate the entire thing to, because it's still got a lot of life in it.
Well, and that brings to mind what happens when it reaches its lifespan.
Well, they're recyclable. So the recent things I've seen, you can get almost everything recycled off those modules. Probably 5 years ago it was much less, and now they're building within the United States places to recycle them. So the modules are, I think the number is like 98, 99% recyclable. The glass, the silver, the silicon, all that stuff can be reused. And same thing with the electronics. For the microinverters, those can be mostly recycled as well. I don't know the numbers on that, but the modules it's pretty high now.
That's good, because I look at those on people's roofs and I think that's going into landfill, but it's not.
Yeah, I don't know that many are wearing out right now.
Right, no, not yet,
But in another 10 years, but there'll be a lot better They're building big recycling centers.
okay.
One of the people that started Tesla is one of the people that's investing in recycling modules. And the Department of Energy has been working on improving ways, so they've got different pilot programs to increase the amount that's recycled with lower cost. That takes some heat and energy to recycle too. So there's a lot of work on that area to do that. Same thing for batteries. People are asking, well, the batteries, well, they're recyclable. So that when you think about extracting some of those things from the earth, eventually we're starting to move towards let's just reuse and recycle it, and we don't have to dig it out of the ground anymore.
Well, and those recycling centers probably run on solar.
One would hope. I don't know. Hopefully. Electricity is shifting. We got a long ways to go, right, in Illinois? We got a long ways to go. But it's shifting to renewables. So we have a lot of wind in the state. We need a lot more solar. So it's becoming more and more every year renewable energy versus the other stuff. Other questions? Yeah.
So you may or may not know this. For flat roofs, I would assume you'd have to angle the panels so
Yes.
that they would get a better direction from the sun and also keep weather off. Do the cities seem to be okay with changing the look of a house?
Oh yeah, usually if it's a flat roof, there's like a little, I forget what they call it, it's a little wall on the edge, so it's a little safe. And usually the angle isn't above that, so people wouldn't see it anyway. So my brother-in-law has a winery and tasting room. He's got a flat roof, and the edge roof is about 2.5 feet tall, I think. And no one's gonna see it from the street, especially. They're angled about between 5 and 10 degrees. The neat thing about that is if you have like the white surface, they have bifacial modules. So then what hits the back generates electricity as well as hits the front. And so they'll generate more. So a lot of this energy is reflection. My modules are on the west side. Let's say this is the east side. Before I see the sun, the sky is bright, right? These modules on the west side are generating electricity before the sun even rises. So just think if the sun is up there and you've got modules that are either spaced like this, or now they're starting to put them like this too, facing east-west. But if it's facing south like this, light is bouncing around, and so some of it's going to hit the back of that and generate a little bit more electricity. Other questions?
One more.
Yeah.
So, since you're replacing your inverter system, is that going to be something that's more efficient for the EV charging? Because, I mean, isn't it usually taking DC and converting it to AC and then back to DC eventually for the EVs?
Yeah, so I have Enphase inverters, that's what I'm also going to get, so it is going to be AC, so there is a conversion. It uses the same inverters that are going to be in my roof in the system that inverts it back to DC. There's a little bit of loss, but the overall design of that battery system, don't mean to market for one particular product, has a lot of efficiency, so the round trip efficiency is still really good. But it is an extra conversion, that is true. All right, well, thanks everybody. It's been great talking about solar.
Thank you, Mike. I'm so glad you joined us today. And thanks to all of you for coming this evening. Please take a moment to fill out our evaluation before you leave and drop it off in the black tray at the back. And did you talk about your
I did.
sign-up sheet? Yes.
If you want to sign up for our newsletter, there's a sign-up sheet up here. If you put your name and your email, you'll get added to our list for the newsletter, and you'll be updated on events and things about policy and that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. And don't forget to sign up for Protecting Dark Skies on November 6th. And have a nice evening.
Thank you.